Tiny house toilets, perhaps one of the most often asked question I get as a tiny house builder. What kind of toilet can I have in my tiny house? It's even more popular than the questions that I get around legalities of parking a tiny house. That has led me to make this video for you, and I'm going to run through all the various options that you have for toilets in a tiny house, and then if you stick around to the end, I'm going to tell you which one I think you should get. Okay, so tiny house toilets, let's jump right into it. There are basically 4 distinct categories of toilet variations that you can typically have in a tiny house. First and foremost, I want to start off with composting. By and large, probably the most popular option in the tiny house community. Composting in and of itself is kind of a bit of a broad category. I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible. It starts with something as basic as a 5-gallon bucket in some form of wooden box with a toilet seat on top. That's your most basic form of toilet. Now you use that toilet, you have some kind of medium like sawdust or whatever. People use all different types of things, but sawdust is obviously popular. You use the toilet, dump some sawdust in there, you go away, you come back, you use it again. At some point, you empty the toilet into a composting pile or similar, and so it goes. Now, the box that bucket sits in probably should be fairly well ventilated. That will help the drying that needs to go on within the bucket itself, and it will also mitigate any odors and things that might still emanate from the bucket, even if you're using an ample amount of sawdust. Anyway, very inexpensive is definitely a huge pro with that, and you know, it's entry level, right? It's how you get involved, how you get a toilet into your house as quickly and easily as possible. Composting toilets run a pretty broad spectrum. The one I just described for you can probably be built for $20 or less, but there are companies out there that sell much fancier composting toilets. Nature's Head comes to mind, a very popular option in the tiny house community. And what that is effectively a much fancier version of the bucket scenario that I just described for you. So a couple additional features. The main additional feature that a Nature's Head toilet has, or some of the higher end toilets have, is a urine diverter. So in other words, there is a separation of the urine from the fecal matter. It's like everybody does it. It's a thing. And what that gets you is better drying, better composting, less odor, and so forth when you separate the two out like that. So there's a separate urine tank, and then there's one for the fecal matter. These toilets also have some sort of churning mechanism. They do some sort of rotation in the case of the separate. So Nature's Head separate, 2 huge players in composting toilet world. And they handle it a little bit differently, right? So the separate has a receptacle in there that kind of, every time you use it, spins a little bit. That helps to distribute the waste more evenly inside of the bucket or chamber, if you will. And the Nature's Head has either a hand crank or motor on the side, which moves the fecal matter around and helps start the composting process in that sense. Composting toilets, it's not for everybody. It's definitely something that you're going to have to get used to. It's very different from the toilet that you've maybe gotten used to, the regular flush toilet that you've used all your life. But it's definitely doable. A lot of people like it. A lot of people have no issue with it once you kind of get over that sort of aspect of the learning curve. Another aspect of the composting toilet is they're called composting toilets, but they're not actually composting toilets because the composting does not occur in the toilet itself. It occurs with the waste once you take it out of the toilet and you actually put it in a composting pile. So it's a bit of a misnomer, really. It's more of a dry toilet in the sense that there's no water or anything utilized to assist in the process. But it's only a composting toilet if you actually do something with what's in the toilet. There is a great book. I'm going to link to it in the description below. It's called Manure, and it goes through all the various aspects of composting, what to do with the waste material in the toilet, and so on and so forth. I highly recommend it. Link to that is in the description below. That's what I meant to say. Option number 2 is a toilet called the dry flush toilet. Now, this is a bit of a hybrid. If there's any parents out there that have used something called a diaper genie, this is very similar to it. So it uses a plastic liner, which is in the form of a cartridge. The toilet looks like a standard toilet, sort of, a little plasticky. It uses a cartridge liner, and you utilize the toilet as you would a regular toilet. And then you hit a button, and what it does is it starts this weird suction spinning thing that takes the waste in the toilet bowl at that point and encapsulates it in this bag-like thing. So think of a long plastic liner, you use the toilet, you hit the button, it spins, sucks the air out, and does its thing, and you're left with this kind of like sausage-like thing that gets created out of this liner. Each use, it brings more liner down and so forth. And this is, to me as a parent, very similar to how I experienced the diaper genie when my daughter was back in the day when she was in diapers. Same concept. It's a great option for a lot of people because the use of it is very simple. The power that it draws is very minimal. You can run this off of solar in an off-grid scenario for sure. And people just like the fact that nothing really inherently weird about it. Once the cartridge is used up, you take the contents of the toilet, you throw it in the garbage, just like you would with the diaper genie and a baby's diapers. So that is really great in and of itself. It's also a great solution if you have a house that you rent out. So if you have a tiny house that you're going to be using some of the time, you're going to be renting it out possibly, it is a very easy to use toilet. Each cartridge I think holds about 15 flushes or so. Cartridges are on the expensive side though, so we're getting to the downsides here. Some would argue that it's not a terribly environmentally friendly option to do this. And again, you have to have the cartridges on hand, otherwise the toilet simply can't be used. So that is a dry flush toilet. Link in the description below as well, so you can find out more about it. Third option is a family of toilets that can be loosely categorized as incinerating toilets. So these toilets use a burn process to get rid of the waste. I personally have this toilet. It's called the Incinerating. There's a couple manufacturers of these. But Incinerating, a Texas-based company, is the maker of my toilet and probably, I'd say, the most well-known incinerating toilet maker. The toilet appealed to me because, one, it's high-tech, and I'm like a tech guy, so I gravitated towards that. Two, I really like the fact that it just takes all the need for plumbing out of the equation. It's a standalone toilet. It's made out of metal. You put a paper sleeve into it, you use it like a regular toilet. There's a pedal on the side, you hit that pedal, the jaws to hell, as I call them, open up, and everything falls down into this burn chamber. You release the foot pedal, the whole thing closes up again, you hit a button, it starts a 90-minute burn cycle, and it vents to the outside basically. So as soon as you hit that button, there's a fan, like an air extraction fan that kicks in, venting to the outside, and the burn chamber basically starts to heat up. The burn chamber is like the size of a, small crock pot. The beauty of this thing is that in those 90 minutes, it turns everything to just a fine ash. You need to empty it, depending on how often you use it, once every week or two, and literally everything that comes out of it is just dust, basically. So I like it for that reason. A lot of people have the question, well, when you fire that thing up though, doesn't it smell weird? And the answer to that is yes, initially, briefly. But what it is since that paper liner kind of is the highest point once it gets into that burn chamber, that's the part that catches fire or that starts to disintegrate the quickest. And you do get sort of a scent of like paper burning kind of smell. And then that goes away, and I personally, can't smell it after that. If you did have issue with that, I always would say, well, then, when you vent outside, just run a pipe up to the roof line and you're never going to smell a thing. So, hugely cool toilet. I've had it for years and years. It's never given me any problems. It's built like a tank. The thing is awesome. I personally recommend it. It was perfect for me because I didn't have a septic system here in my tiny house, and I didn't feel like spending 20 grand to have one put in. And two, I didn't want to run like any kind of plumbing that would be complicated or so forth as well. This was the easiest solution for me. Third point being that I had ample electricity here. I wasn't aiming for any kind of like off-grid scenario with my tiny house, and therefore it was perfectly fine for me to have an incinerating toilet because, well, the house is plugged in. My heat is electric, the toilet is electric, hot water heater is electric. I don't use any propane here. It's 100% electric, so it fit the bill for that as well. Cost of acquisition is on the high side, even more expensive than the fancy composting toilets I referenced previously. So you're looking at a price of probably around $1,700 or thereabouts for the Incinerating. And surprisingly, that is on the lower end. There is another toilet. I don't know if they're still in business or not, but I believe they're Scandinavian based. It's called the Cinderella. Yeah, I know, cute. They offer a toilet which runs more like in the realm, don't quote me on it, but probably in the $4,000 to $5,000 range. It's effectively an Incinerating on steroids, whereas the Incinerating is, very mechanical, a little clunky, like I said, built like a tank. The Cinderella is the finessed, more refined version of the Incinerating. So it's a preference thing. If you got $5,000 lying around to spend on a toilet, great, get that one. I've been perfectly happy with the Incinerating, but of course it's based on how much electricity you have available and so on and so forth if you're going off grid, that kind of thing. So we're down to the fourth and final broad category of toilets, and it's one that you're probably already familiar with. It's the flush toilet. I couldn't leave it out of an option list for tiny house toilets. I have seen tiny houses that have a flush toilet. Now, the upside there is there's nothing to get used to. You've probably used a flush toilet for the bulk of your life. How difficult could it be to continue to use a flush toilet? Well, that's great. The only issue is that tiny houses being built on wheels, being built on trailers, kind of lend themselves to moving around. Flush toilets aren't really conducive to that. They're meant to be stationary. They have a tank that's not sealed. So imagine like you have a flush toilet and you're driving down the highway. What do you think is going to happen? Is water's going to slosh out all over the place? It's not going to be a good scene. That said, a flush toilet is an option in a tiny house when you have a very controlled place that this tiny house is going to reside. What I'm talking about is, think of an aging in place scenario perhaps for your elderly parents. You're building this in the backyard as a guest space. You're fortunate enough to live in an area that allows for auxiliary dwelling units where you can actually have a tiny house adjacent to your other full-size residence. In these types of scenarios where you have ample access to municipal sewer and municipal water supply, there's no reason why you can't have a flush toilet in your tiny house. If you're in that situation where you're not going to be moving the house around much, it's going to be residing mostly in your backyard, maybe you'll move it to another place every now and so often, a flush toilet is a perfectly reasonable and viable option. They are on the heavier side, they're made of porcelain typically. They are large, so you are going to be taking up a little bit more space in the tiny house by going with a flush toilet, and all of the downsides that I've already mentioned to you. But by all means, go with a flush toilet. That brings me to the end of the four broad categories: composting, dry flush, incinerating, standard flush toilet. Those are broadly your options. So which one is the best option? Well, for my particular scenario, it was the Incinerating. For your particular scenario, it could be something different. And that's really the best way to answer that question, which is the best option? It comes down to which is the best option for you. What do you want to deal with? How difficult do you want it to be? Is it even viable in the off-grid scenario that you're envisioning for your tiny house? Do you have access to municipal sewer, to a septic system? Do you have ample water access? All these questions need to be answered to get to the point where you're able to select a toilet that makes the most sense for your scenario. I know you probably wish I had a better answer than that, but the easy answer is it depends, and it depends entirely on how your house is set up and what you're willing to go through, how much inconvenience, how easy you want it to be. Also, not unimportant is your budget, right? I referenced the $5 bucket, and I referenced the $5,000 Cinderella incinerating toilet. That is a huge monetary span there that you have in terms of options there, right? Not everybody's going to have the budget for the $5,000 toilet, even though maybe it's the one that they want. So you get what I'm trying to say here. The best toilet is the toilet that works best for you. So if this video has been helpful to you, I would really appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button, because I want to make more of these videos. And also please share, like, and comment below, because that helps me figure out what people want to find out more about. You know, did I miss anything in this video? Do you disagree with anything that I've said in this video? Keep it nice. That's what I'm curious about. I'll make every possible effort to answer any and all of your questions. And like I said, yeah, I'm going to keep these topics and these videos coming. So thank you, and let me know which toilet you got.